Whoa, that's what you should never do. You should never cut with the tip of the bar because it will kick back and eat your lunch. So maybe you're gonna borrow a saw or buy a saw, or your friend's gonna loan you his saw so you can cut down a nasty tree for him. Let me show you a few tricks that might make them think you know what you're doing and might even keep you from getting hurt. So let's step away from this for a minute. We'll come back out and chew some of this wood up and go in and talk about some of the things that you darn sure better know about making these things run and making sure that they don't put you in the hospital. So since slow is smooth and smooth is fast, chainsaw maintenance is a thing. And sharpening is a thing people worry about, and sharpening is a thing that discourages them. But there are other things. There's what you do to the motor, there's what you do to the bar, and they all are pointed towards what you do with the thing when you're working. We're going to jump back outside once this thing is sharp and show you some cuts, some types of cuts, some things to watch out for, and some things that will make you money. Chain first. This is a semi-chisel bit on the chain, 3/8 pitch. And what that means is it's 3/8 of an inch from center to center on these rivets. That's all it means. Chainsaws used to be 3/4 inch. They go all the way down now to, smaller than 3/8 pitch. You need to verify what your saw likes, and you need to verify that you have some idea how to use a file. In this case, this is a 7/30 seconds for you metric users, round file. It's a double cut, whatever that means, in the way the file's cut. And the whole bit about the angle, which used to be so sort of easy to get wrong, now is made permanent because most chain manufacturers emboss a little line on the top of the bit that tells you what angle you should be maintaining. So it's easy. It's easy enough that I don't think you even need to buy one of those little file guides, because you can just see whether or not your file angle is matching the line on the top. And by the way, you always have a tendency to either get too square or too steep, and if you're going to be one or the other, get a little too steep because it exaggerates the point of the tooth, whether it's a round file or whether it's a round chain or one of these semi-chisel bits. The first part of the tooth to make contact with the wood is the critical part. So when you're filing, it's easy as your tooth gets shorter for your file to get higher. Don't do that. If you're going to do anything, make your file get lower into the tooth, and what that does, it creates a serious gullet. The gullet is this C-shape opening. You want this to be a letter C. You don't want it to open up to where the cutting edge gets further and further back, and you don't need to get it overhanging too far. Like this one right here. Look at that right there. That is just, in my opinion, about right. The gullet is what cuts. A couple other parts. That little tooth down there, that's a driver. That's what gets the power from the sprocket back at the saw. That's what hooks onto the sprocket and sends it down the road. This is a raker, okay? You see that the height of that right there should be just a little bit like 30 thousandths or half a 16th, a 32nd of an inch below the cutting edge. And to do that, to keep that short enough, periodically, like maybe every third or fourth time you file the tooth, you knock the top of the rakers down. Just a few strokes. Do it from the same side you file from. And over time, you can tend to angle it just a little bit so that it's a smooth transition and this rolls through the wood instead of scraping. But this distance right here, the distance between the cutting edges and the top of that raker, is what determines the thickness of the chip or the sawdust. If you're just pulling dust and you know your chain is sharp, it's because you got to knock down your rakers. So there's a lot more that can be said and a lot more that other guys know than I know about filing. But it boils down to it's got to be sharp enough to cut so that when the motor makes it go round and round, it does the work. But you should be keeping track of the number of strokes on each tooth so that one tooth, if you have to file it excessively, okay, but in general, just enough to get it sharp. And you have to keep track of filing about the same forehand and backhand, right? And some guys are better at filing from this side. I think I'm better filing from this side. And so, 3 or 4 passes, unless you've hit a little bit of dirt, that tooth right there hit something it didn't like. But you want to keep your file, your teeth, the same length on both sides if you can. So that means there's some keeping track and an honest evaluation of how you are filing when you're pulling with the back of your forearm or pushing with the front. All right, motor maintenance. I don't like small engine maintenance, but I've got to keep it running well enough to run. First thing, if somebody gives you a chainsaw, an old chainsaw, or you get one at an estate sale or a garage sale and it's old, you know it's old, probably the mix ratio is 32-to-1, oil to gas, 2-stroke motor oil. Modern chainsaws are 50-to-1. So pay attention to that. I like to buy the oil already packaged in 1-gallon increments. I just pour it in to the can. If there's a little gas in the bottom, little gas, pour the bottle in, shake, 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 fill it up. Sometimes I rinse it out, push it in at the end, rinse it out to get every little bit. Because if you've got to choose between too rich, that is too much oil, and too lean, that is not enough, always choose too rich. The worst thing that can happen from running a little too much oil in your mix is you foul the plugs. You take the plug out, if it's dark gray or light gray, it's great. If it's black or if it's got carbon caked on there, cut back your oil a little bit, but you're never going to blow a saw up if you run your oil rich. So second item, before I get to the punchline that might save your life, is check your air filter once in a while. Wherever it is and whatever kind it is, check it, blow it off with compressed air. Some of them you rinse off with gas. Keep your air filter clean enough. But here is the important thing. Sometimes chains come off if you don't keep them tight enough. You should keep them pretty darn tight so that you have full bearing, right? So it's not bagging, so it's not tight on the backside and loose on the front when you're cutting. You want it to have full bearing. The oil is going to keep it from wearing if you keep it oiled. But if it's an old saw, it probably does not have a full floating clutch, which is what most saws have now. It probably has a star clutch, like that. Here's the danger. Here's a chain. There's a star clutch. If the chain flies off the bar, if you get a branch under there and the chain flies off and the old saw's got a star clutch, that chain's going to keep spinning. It's going to be lashing around everywhere, including up on your arms and down on your legs, and it will eat your lunch. So if you've got an old saw, the first thing you do is take it to a saw shop and say, put a full floating clutch on there, unless you know how to do it. This could save your life. Let's make a few cuts. But before I do that, chainsaws come in a wide variety. It's like hammers, right? It's like hammers and calibers in rifles, everything from soup to nuts, because you don't always have the same job every darn day. You can buy bars, this is the bar, of course, on a chainsaw, down to 12 inches. Little bitty guys. And they are substantially more dangerous than, for instance, a 36-inch bar. You can get bars that are 8 feet long, for crying out loud. But 24, 26, 28 will do a lot. If you got to pick just one, make sure it's long enough, right? It's better to have all the length that you need. But for light work, and you don't need air plugs with this, it's very quiet, but let me just show you some cuts. All right, so the first rule of chainsaws is, sooner or later everybody gets cut, which means it's a good idea to have these Kevlar shafts on here, because if there's one place you don't want to get cut, it's in here, right? I like gloves. I just like them. Buck and Billy Ray doesn't wear them. I don't understand it, but that guy's the real deal. So starting, there's a world of controversy about drop starting, right? I mean, that bothers a lot of people, and OSHA will bust your chops. An alternative is to put your foot in there, hold the bar up off the ground, an alternative is to engage the chain brake and be ready to disengage it. If you've got a piece of wood to rest it on, why wouldn't you drop start it? Now, I've never even tried, and I don't think, well, I guess I'll do it. I see guys holding it between their legs. All right. But the upshot of it is, sometimes you have to be able to drop start. You find yourself out of position. You're standing on a log. It's 8 feet to the ground. Oh, I can't drop start it? You have to be able to drop start. Sometimes. The corollary to that is, when you're walking around with a chainsaw and it's running, put the chain brake on. Now, if you fall, you get tangled up, the chain brake will save you, and not just on a kickback. So we did a video about the benefits of an electric saw, and they've gotten really good, but the biggest one is, if you're a beginner, here's how you start it. You push the button, and it's started. Won't go. That's pretty nice. The downside to a short bar on an electric saw is, man, they want to kick back. I mean, you can visualize, right, that the bar is wanting to run right up and eat your lunch. That's why, as has been pointed out on this channel before, it's a mistake when I sometimes hold that top handle like that. You want your thumb around there to resist that kickback, because kickback, it's the big deal. So now it's time to cut. Here's some things to think about technique, right? The things to keep track of when you're cutting. You protect your ears. Or the safest part of the bar to cut with is right here, because the chain is pulling you into the work and the dogs engage the material. The dogs create a fulcrum, so you can lift against those dogs and increase the download. I mean, more than just gravity or pushing down. The dogs enable you to roll the log if you want. Now, the same thing is true from the other side. I'll just show you before I cut it. It is safe as in your mother's arms to cut with the top of the bar right there. You can lean back and cut until you get out towards the tip, and the kickback wants to go bam. All right, here's garden variety. Let gravity be your friend. Is that obvious? As the log is crippled and begins to lose its grip on the wood, it falls open and doesn't pinch your saw. Now, if you come to the middle of a span and try to do that, let me show you what happens. A skill saw does the same thing. That's why when you're cutting, the end should always be falling free. Now, everything here is so light that it doesn't matter. I can just, but if the darn thing weighs 5,000 pounds, when you're stuck, you're really stuck. So you rather than do that, you can start from the top and finish from the bottom. So everything's an iteration of those points. Top of the bar, perfectly safe, but you got to lift. Bottom of the bar, up against the dogs, it's like in your mother's arms. Getting out towards the tip, and sometimes you got to do it, like if you're bumping knots. Bumping knots means cutting off these. You got to use the end of the bar. So Buck and Billy Ray, the guy's a master. He says, stand up and buck. Let me show you what he's talking about. If you got a short bar, we do the old drop start. Oh, nice. And you're bucking firewood on the ground, even here. Now I should have filed that saw, but I'm bent over, you see? If you, on the other hand, have got a longer bar on your saw, it's easier on your back. But I'll tell you where this is not easier on your back is cutting overhead. I did not take a hard fall. Thank you, Mr. Apple. This introduces the topic of in position and out of position cutting. Cutting firewood on a deck or on sawbucks or something, that's in position. You've got your balance. But then when you're walking around on that pile of firewood, you're out of position. Or if you're limbing trees, maybe you've climbed a tree, and by the way, if you ever think it's smart to lean a ladder up against a tree and climb up the ladder and cut off pieces, think again and then go watch some fail videos on YouTube. You're always safer if you are tied to the tree, as in climbing the tree with a safety line around your waist, because then whatever happens with the material you've cut off, it's not going to knock you to the ground with a running chainsaw. But a light saw with a short bar overhead, a heavier saw with a longer bar down on the ground, when you're putting a face in a tree. These things are good for forming concrete. They're just good for a lot of things. I don't know what I've left out. I'm sure I've left out something. Would you remind me? Put it in the video. Check out the other videos, how to be a chainsaw hero and other fairly nonsensical approaches to a YouTube video. But chainsaws are not nonsensical. They are a labor saver. They will make you capable of doing things you could do in no other way. Thanks for watching Essential Craftsman, and keep up the good work.